If I were to ask your team what it's like to work with you on your best day, I think they'd say some pretty good things, right? So they might talk about how you're really motivating, you clear direction, how much energy you bring to the room. Maybe you're like really inspiring. But how about if I asked about your worst day? Because in many ways, that's actually a more true measure of your leadership. And it's not about your ceiling, how great you can be. It's actually about your flaw. And when I say flaw, that's F-L-O-O-R. It's the worst version of yourself. And so when you're tired, you're hungry, frustrated, hungover, or just being a little bit human, what is that version? Because that particular version of you is potentially going to be a little bit too low, and it's going to be potentially destructive. So today's episode is going to look at your flaw and why, in many ways, raising your flaw is a more effective and more productive way to become a better leader than just focusing on your ceiling. So with this ceiling versus floor discussion, a lot of people, they go, how do I become a better leader? I think, what can I do? What can I add to my leadership capability? And I cynically say, hey, one of the best things you can do is just avoid being a bad leader, because it's often the absence of bad that can make something good. I'm going to sidestep because I have to include this Carl Barron bit that he does because I love it. You should look it up. And he talks about in Australia how we don't say what we are, we just say we're not. So it's like, hey, g'day mate, how are you? Not bad. What have you been doing? Not much. Where is this place? Not far. Anyway, it's much funnier when he does it. But the point to it is that this whole, like what we're not, whilst it's a funny thing what we say, we should actually think about it when it comes to leadership, because we're on this never-ending journey. And it's not that you shouldn't work on your ceiling. You should work on your ceiling, and there is value in that. But you're automatically going to do that. Another model that you can look at is John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. So he talks about level 1 being the positional leader. I've got a title, great. Level 2 being the relationship and going from there. And so there's so many opportunities as a leader to damage the relationship, not because you want to, not because you're not a good person. It's because there's this tension that exists. So you're a manager of people, you need to achieve outcomes, and those outcomes require those people. And so there's this natural tension that exists. And so you're trying to make this happen, and it's like you can be knocking over all these glasses, all these plates and that sort of thing as you're trying to do that. And that's your flaw. So the flaw is that version of you that others experience. And it's that point where your self-awareness is just gone walkabout. It's just your reactions are taking over. And if you're not choosing your behavior, you're not the one in charge. Your flaw is in charge. Now, for some of us, it shows up as just being a bit irritable, snappy, venting, cutting people off, talking over people. But for others, it's the opposite. Like you might be thinking, oh, hang on, I won't say anything. I'll just be silent. I'll be withdrawn. But people can feel that. They're like, oh, what's going on? Well, why is that person they're not talking? And it's not about just being able to bounce back, because once they've had that experience, once they've felt your flaw, it leaves a mark. And this is important to think about as a leader. Most leaders, whether you consciously think this or unconsciously, you justify your flaw. And it goes like this. I'm under way more pressure than anybody else. My stress is different to your stress. You have no idea what I do for this business. You have no idea what I contribute. And my role has greater weight. So therefore, my lapses are forgivable. But if you think about it, and Darka Keltner from Berkeley looked at this and said, hey, it becomes worse. Like as you go up the ladder, your ability to empathize with other people naturally gets less, because you can actually get away with it in your mind, get away with not doing it, because no one's going to pull you back and say, hey, you need to stop that. So you're under more pressure, you're in charge, but what happens is everything you do reverberates. It goes through the whole business. Everything is multiplying. So being in charge, it may feel less necessary, but it's actually more necessary. It's actually a key thing is to feel what other people are feeling, and no one's going to stop you. That's the thing. If you think about a more junior staff member who is dealing with a customer in the wrong way, their team leader is going to go, hey, let's talk about that. They're going to see it in real time, but no one's necessarily doing that with you. Okay, now let's look at an example that may be a little bit more visible for you. Let's move away from leaders for a moment. And so let's look at a new graduate versus a seasoned professional in a business. And so when a graduate comes in, and think about someone who has high potential, they're smart, they've just finished their degree. In many cases, their ceiling can be quite high, even in those early stages. I'm not just talking about their whole career. I mean, straight away. They can have these flashes of brilliance. They can put together some analysis that was really good, or they can just get some really good creative work done. They've got all this enthusiasm and energy. But then we go, what's their worst piece of work? What's the thing that they don't know that kind of people know? So when they nail it, it's awesome. But also their floor is a lot lower because they just don't have that experience. Maybe it's handling things emotionally. Maybe it's certain circumstances, certain people, or just managing themselves. Now, in those scenarios, we accept that, and that's okay. We accept that the graduate's going to have a good ceiling, but their floor is going to be lower, and working with them to build up that floor is how they become that seasoned professional. It's not a difference in terms of who's smarter, and so the difference between the ceiling of the professional ceiling is still going to be higher, but the ceiling between the graduate and the professional might be like this, but the floor between the graduate and professional might be like this. Sorry, for those listening, I'm just showing the difference with my hands. So it's chalk and cheese. So one more example that, if this hasn't rung home for you yet, and I'm known to provide some analogies with sports, so I'm going to just use one today, being LeBron James, professional basketball player in the NBA. Most of you would have heard of him, and he's known to hardly ever score less than 20 points in a game. Right? His career average is about 27. So if you think about his average is 27, it doesn't drop below 20 very often. So that is very, very consistent. Whereas if you have a really talented rookie, the rookie might score 35 one night, score 6 points the next. And you don't know what sort of person you're going to get. For those who know the NBA, maybe it's like a Jalen Green type person from a few years ago. Sorry for the strays, Jalen, but that might help people to know. So it's that unpredictability. It's that difference. There's a psychologist, Anders Ericsson, who looked at, some of you may have heard the term deliberate practice. And it's that mastery is about, it's not about the peaks, it's about the consistency. So thinking about the sports people, the graduate or what have you, it's not about how high they go, it's their floor. And so thinking about it as a leader, your floor defines how people feel around you, how whether they're going to be anxious, whether they're going to be confused, whether they are going to feel overwhelmed. And generally, nobody's there watching you. And so the person who needs to be watching you is yourself. And there are some things that you do. So that's the good news. We're going to go through what you can potentially do, if you're up for it, to identify your flaw and to proactively and consciously do something about it. All right, so I think you get by now what I'm talking about when it comes to the flaw. But you might be thinking, well, what might my flaw be if maybe I'm not that angry person? Do I even have a flaw? Well, again, we all have a flaw. One way to look at it, and for those who know me, you know that I love the DISC profiles. That's DISC, the dominant, influential, steady, and conscientious. It's a personality profile, and it's really good to frame such things because you've got the pros and the cons of each of the styles. So let's use DISC as a way to consider your flaw, and we of course look at your pros, your positives, your strengths before we get into that, and that can help build the other side. So all of the styles bring strengths at its best, right? But under pressure, there's potentially the flaw behavior. So let's start with everybody's favorite, the dominant type. D comes first. I think they do that deliberately, actually. So the D style, they love to drive outcomes. They make decisions quickly, they take charge, they get results. This can be energizing, decisive, bold. But when they hit the floor, what does that drive become? It becomes force. We try and just cram it in there and become impatient, and why are things not moving, and controlling and pushy and aggressive. And so people can avoid them not because that person's wrong, but a little bit scared. And the cost of that interaction, like, that feels high. So let's call that the volcano version of the D. Amy Edmondson, who did some research, looked at safety, psychological safety. And so in the absence of safety, we go from learning and proactive, and I often talk about like green line, like being really positive and open and that sort of thing, to red line, where we're actually just scared and our brain is freezing and all we're trying to do is survive. We're trying to dodge those bullets and that sort of thing. So the flaw category for a D is that flip side, the aggression. The productive driving becomes aggression, which creates fear, which is not productive. All right. Sorry for the Ds. You get picked on a lot in these sessions, but fortunately, you can take it. Now let's move to the I's. I is the influential. Now the I's, they love to inspire. They're social, big kind of hand actions, very optimistic, creative. Really, they're the types that come into the room. They bring the energy into the room. Great with relationships, and really get things going. So the flip side of that is chaos and overwhelming people with enthusiasms and too many ideas. It's like, yeah, we can this, and that creativity turns into confusion because there's like so many ideas and too many things happening and going in different directions, and we're feeling erratic. And so all of that activity results in very little activity because people are exhausted. They're trying to catch all the different balls that are being thrown their way, and it's just too much. All right. So that's the downside of the I's. Now let's get to the S. And surely there's no flaw for the S's because they're the dependable, supportive people. They're calm under pressure. They like harmony. They like people. So yeah, there's no flaw for the S's. I'm just kidding. Of course there is. So the flip side of that is that they don't want to upset anyone, so they stay quiet. They agree when they shouldn't. They hold back feedback. There's something underneath them, but they don't want to say it. They avoid those tensions. And ultimately, they don't hold people accountable, or what they do is they explode or something like that. So they're just bottling it all up. They're trying to protect people's feelings, but by not addressing issues, they're making everyone feel a whole lot worse because things are getting very, very bad. So yes, there's also a flaw for the S. Now finally, C, the conscientious style. So the C style, they bring accuracy. They love logic, high standards, analysis. They can create order from chaos. So what's their flaw? Well, let's have a look at that detail and go over it, and let me just lock myself away and withdraw and just get everything perfect and not talk to anybody because I'm solving the world's problems here. And don't rush brilliance because it's going to happen. It'll happen when it happens. Meanwhile, the place is on fire. People feel like they're not being supported. They're second guessing everything. They're like, oh, nothing's good enough. And that's stressful as well. Okay, so with these disc types, each of them has a powerful strength. So drive, influence, support, or precision. And if you've not done your disc profile before, I suggest you do it. And if not, there are other ways to work it out. But many of you, I feel, have done it or have heard of it, and I suggest investigating. So then once you've done that, is to go, well, okay, what happens when the pressure hits? What are my positives when things are good, and what happens when things go bad, and what sort of flaw exists? Because then once you know that, you can look out for those sorts of behaviors, and then you can also identify, well, when have I actually done that? When has that shown up? And then if you know when it's shown up, you can start to visibly see it when it's happening in real time. That's the real power. Sigal Barsa's research looked at this and said, hey, this flaw phenomenon, didn't use those terms, but can actually multiply. It can spread amongst the team. So it's not just about the one person who is impacted by this. It's actually, if you've got multiple people, then those multiple people start to talk and they start to go, well, how do I prepare for this person? What do I need to do with this leader? How do I make sure I navigate? Now all this energy from the team is working around you. Whereas actually what you want them to be doing is to be working on the work. And so it's not too late. It's never too late, because you can have a positive recent history, and the more that time that has passed since the last time, the better. But it's one of those things that can really multiply with your team. Okay, so here's a bit of a test. So when your name comes up on this thing on your phone, when they see that picture, what is the initial feeling that your team gets? Is it like oh, that's great that they're calling to check in on me, or it's like, oh no, what next? What have I done wrong? Or oh, what are they going to send my way now? Or okay, I'm going to be stuck on the phone for ages. What is that feeling? Is it a feeling of dread? Is it a negative feeling, or is it a positive feeling? Because that is the feeling that they get. That is, that's the flaw showing up too often and having an adverse impact on the team. Now, of course, you're not going to know that. Don't go around to the team and say, hey, when I call you, what sort of feeling do you get? Of course, they're not going to tell you. It's just something for you to think about. And what is it that you want them to feel when they see your name? And work towards that. And what is it that you don't want them to feel? And work away from that. So the key thing about this is to avoid the reaction that people have where they have these unpredictability stress triggers, and it's like a physical thing that happens. I often talk about people prefer bad news sometimes than uncertainty. And it's like, if you were to have somebody who has, they're consistently okay, versus someone who's up and who's down and that sort of thing, that's an unpredictability that makes people, like, the brain just tries to work out what's going on, and creates a whole lot of stress. And so that's the thing. Is your flaw causing people to feel anxious and unsafe? Is your flaw making people to feel like, they're preparing for what's next? Or is your flaw not that bad? It's actually not creating a whole lot of uncertainty for people. That's where you want it to be. All right, so I've talked a lot about what it is, when it happens, the adverse impacts. Now let's get a little bit more practical as to what you can do to raise your flaw. And the first thing, of course, is awareness. All right, what is it actually? What is your flaw? What does it look like? When does it show up? Self-awareness is one of the keys to effective leadership performance. Now, don't get me wrong, businesses can be successful if you don't have strong self-awareness. It happens all the time, whether it's amazing IP, or you've just taken advantage of an opportunity in the market, or you've established these incredible business partnerships, right? So businesses can still be successful. However, people leadership is not going to be successful without self-awareness. And so being able to identify it is an important thing. And it's not about, okay, well, can I sit down and identify it now? And I don't know what it is, or I've identified it, okay, now that's done. It's an ongoing, always on type of thing. And to be an effective leader, you kind of need to be interested in these sorts of things. So self-awareness, if you are going to be leading people, it's not going to go away as a topic, as something you need to do. And it's also, once you start doing it, it becomes easier, because the self-awareness and maybe looking in the mirror can be hard the first time, the second time, and seeing that. After a while, you become a little bit more attuned to it and go, okay, that's what I'm like. And that's okay. That's okay for now. I'm going to accept that. I'm going to work on that. And when you see better versions of yourself, you can build momentum, but you have to face up to the mirror to see what is that version of me in order to do it, in order to identify it in real time. So once you can see when it happens, what are the triggers for you? When does your energy dip? Is it that you become stressed by certain things? Certain things happen at work. Is it when you're tired, you've got too much work? It's when you're trying to work on something and you just can't get to it. So what are those things that trigger you to be more like, have your flaw come out? And so if you look at, okay, what happened? What took place? How did I feel? What did I do? Write it down, note it down, and go, what was that thing? Because if it is, for example, did you justify it with pressure? Was it like, well, I was under this pressure, they interrupted me, I wanted to get this work done, people were coming into my office, and I just couldn't get done what I needed to get done? Or was it like, I had this thing happen? what was your justification for your flaw? Now have a think about this. Does your justification matter when we think about the impact that you had on the people? So then once you've identified what it is that you did, what was your trigger, then you can start to do some practical things. So for example, if you are finding that everyone's coming into your office and interrupting you, and you've got a open door policy, which I don't love the open door policy term or trend or whenever it started. Happened a few years ago. I remember there was a movie with like Ashton Kutcher or Justin Timberlake, one of those guys, and was in this new age tech business, and he was removing all the doors because he's like, hey, this is the sort of culture where we have no doors. You can come see us anytime. And it's silly because you don't need to be accessible by everyone all the time. That's not realistic. And most people don't want that nor expect that. What they do want is when they do access you, that you're present, that you're approachable, that you take action on things that you discuss. You don't say yes and then don't do anything about it. So I often say open person policy is far more effective than open door policy. And so you can lock yourself away. So if you need to get things done, if you're stressed that like, oh, everyone keeps coming to my office and you're typing away and then they come in and you're like, oh, yep, okay, sure, yep, and you're not even listening to them, and you've just typed yep, sure to the person you're emailing. It's not good. That's not good for you, not good for them. So you can lock yourself away and be focused on things. I'll tell you how to do it. So because a lot of people they struggle with this, like, oh, should I put up a sign and that sort of thing. All you need to do is, so you want to go lock yourself away for 2 hours there. You want to go to a cafe or what have you. You just go to your team, hey, I'm just going to go work on some deep work for the next 2 hours. Do you have any questions, anything I can help with? I'm going to go fill up my tea and I'll be back in a few minutes. Go back, come back. Okay, question here, question there. Okay, fantastic. I'll see you in a couple of hours. For the most part, no one's going to disturb you. And then when you come back, say, thanks, oh, that was great. Anything come up, need a hand, that sort of thing. So you're channeling those interruptions to when you want and puts you in a better mood and makes you more approachable. That's just one of many things you can do to put yourself in a better mood so that when you deal with your team, it's open person policy, not open door policy. So just one other practical thing to counterbalance things. So if you can identify it, your triggers and that sort of thing, what's something you can do instead? So don't stop it, swap it. So if passion starts becoming aggression, if you can ask a clarifying question before you speak. If care becomes avoidance, set yourself a goal to resolve the issue or talk about it within the next 48 hours. And if your charisma becomes over-talking, just find one person, a quieter voice to be able to get them involved. It can just be these little things that can just change and adapt the approach. And so by building these small corrections, these small behaviors, not stopping, just swapping, you start to actually change things. And this is far more effective than these motherhood statements like, I'm just going to become a better listener. Okay, because you say, I just going to become a better listener, then you forget about it. But if you've got specifically, when this happens, I'm going to do this, you can track it, you can measure it, and you can see real results. By now, if you're still listening, I imagine that this is resonating with you and hopefully it's valuable to help you to raise your floor. One other thing to consider, and this can come up a lot, is that you're probably the big boss or one of the bosses or seen that way. And you probably don't view yourself that way. You are you. You're still the same person. And you view yourself a particular way. But how you're viewed by your team is very different. You're viewed as this person, you're viewed as the position. And you would see it in many circumstances where someone has changed position and people do change their view. It's just human nature of what happens. And so that person becomes more on show. All right? So if you imagine you as a leader, you're on a reality TV show, all right? Except the cameras aren't there. It's actually people's memories of the cameras. And every time you walk across the floor, every meeting that you're late to, every So I email message at 3 a.m. or off the hand comment, it's all recorded on the show. And like what you see on those shows, the trailers don't show the calm moments. It's all the juicy bits, right? It's like the raised eyebrows, like close up on that, or like the flash of like being irritated, or the sarcasm, or the avoidance. So that goes into the juicy parts, go into the trailer, which becomes a highlight reel. And you can't switch off the cameras, not all the time. I mean, you can go, and that's why going on your own is important. But you still have to turn up to the show, right? There still has to be some footage, otherwise that's a problem as well. So how you recharge yourself, how you view this character is really, really important. One other thing I want to talk about from a practical perspective, because people say this helps, is to have the 4 out of 10 conversations. What I mean by that is people ask, oh, how do I have these really difficult conversations like that, those highly confrontational conversations, or the really hard ones? I say, well, the best way is to avoid having to do them in the first place. And that's where the 4 out of 10 conversation happens. 4 out of 10 conversation is the one that a lot of leaders will avoid because it's 4 out of 10. It's a little bit difficult. But by having those on a frequent basis, at the right time, in the right way, you avoid things becoming worse. And so the 4 out of 10 for you is going to be different for the 4 out of 10 for somebody else. The 4 out of 10 for you could be, well, how do I give this person feedback in a good way? Because I feel like, oh, well, I blast people when I get angry, so I don't want to even have a conversation at all. So I'll just avoid it. But then you get really angry and you blast them. Or it's like, oh, hey, I don't want to talk about anything being wrong because I want to feel like this person is really supported and motivated. But then you don't have the conversation and it doesn't get better. And then things get worse and worse and worse. And then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. So the 4 out of 10 conversation is so powerful. If you can build the skills on how to do that on a regular basis, then not only does that help create more certainty for people, they're not feeling uncertain, like what's coming out of nowhere, it improves your own disposition, your own mood, because you're getting what you want, you're not holding things inside yourself, and you're doing it in an effective way. Let's now go to number 5, which is an interesting topic because it's company values, and a lot of you probably have corporate values, company values, that sort of thing. You've probably workshopped it, got people involved, and they're written down and looks really nice on the posters and that sort of thing. And that's great, and that's a really good start. The thing about that, though, is, and different companies have different values. I think it was it Enron who had integrity as a value, and not to pick on them, but that was one of the famous cases where there was a company value that didn't actually align to some of the behaviors. And so when you think about your values and what you're doing, are you the epitome of that value? Are you the role model of that value? And if you're not, here's a good test. If you're not, do people feel like it's okay to let you know? And when you don't do it, do you own it? Because if your floor is very low in comparison to your values, then that's a problem for your team. It really, whatever your values are, people can align to these values or these values. It's just like, are they real? Are they congruent? Do my leaders live those? And so that's another thing to think about. How much of a role model are you with those values all the time? Not 95% of the time, not 99% of the time. When you're under your worst pressure, are you the epitome of those values? Because if you're not, your flaw might be contradicting what your company stands for. Okay, so in conclusion, when people ask, how do I become a great leader? One of the first steps is to go, how do you raise your floor? Because the first step to becoming a great leader is to be not a bad leader, all right? If you're not a bad leader, you're better than a lot of leaders. So be that okay leader, raise your floor, and also then you can work on your ceiling and both start to raise together. This is not something that you can start tomorrow. You really need to start this today because your floor is your emotional legacy with your team. It's your emotional footprint that you leave. And so it can just take one scenario that really gets people off kilter. Every meeting, every email, every conversation. It's not about hitting high highs. It's really about just don't fall through that floor. They don't need you to be this perfect leader. They just need predictability. and your floor will provide that. All right, that's enough thinking for today. I'll let you back to it. Thanks for listening to Lead to Grow with me, Tommy Sim. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, subscribe, and hit the like button wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps more leaders find this show. You can also watch the full episode on YouTube. Just search Lead to Grow with Inject. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.